So welcome everybody to Active Rain University. My name is Bob Stewart, and today we're gonna do a blogging blueprint on homes for sale with something. And if you've joined us for our blogging blueprint classes in the past, you know that this is a series that we do that hopefully helps to get you guys kind of a template that you can use over and over, something repeatable that you can use in your blog with the aim of getting in front of interested consumers. And so when we go through our blogging bootcamp classes, in our keyword phrase class, one of the things that we talk about is the way that consumers go about searching for homes for sale. And one of the things that we talk about is they will search for homes for sale with certain features. And in that bootcamp class, I share the story of being in Dallas, Texas to give a presentation, and the night before the presentation, a tornado comes through Dallas, Texas. And we are forced in our hotel room not to huddle in the basement, because apparently in Dallas they do not have basements. We are forced to huddle in like the middle room of the hotel that we're staying in. And so as we're all huddling there, and there's literally a tornado coming through Dallas, and I had never been in a tornado, so it was very scary to me. So we get into the presentation the next day, and I'm doing a presentation about search engine optimization and the way that consumers look for information online. And as I get up there and I begin to talk about this, I'm reliving my experience from the night before, and I'm talking about how if I was moving to Dallas, I would probably be looking for something like a home for sale with a basement, because my hotel didn't have a basement last night. And somebody in the crowd, or a couple of people, actually raised their hand and said, "Oh, well, we don't have homes for sale with a basement in Dallas." Well, I'm not from Dallas, so I didn't know that. Well, I said, "Well, what do you mean you don't have homes with basements?" And they said, "Well, we have some, but they're not very common because Dallas is built on clay." And so somebody in the audience actually said, "Well," I said, "Well, I'd still search for it. I don't know any better." And a few people in the audience said, "Yeah, well, I don't know why somebody would write a post like that one, but the concept, yeah, we could agree with the concept." But one guy in the audience said, "You know what? I bet a lot of people, a lot of people from here probably know that, but people coming in, if let's say you're on Trulia or you're on Zillow, and you're going on there, and you're just, you come from Seattle, we have basements. You come from the Midwest, you have basements, right? So we're used to having a basement in our home. If I was relocating to Dallas, and I kept going on to Zillow and Trulia, and I'm looking, and I'm not seeing, basements on any of the homes, it wouldn't be shocking for me to go out and do a search like homes for sale with a basement in Dallas. So that day, as we're going through and we're doing the class, there was one gentleman in the audience. His name's Tom Branch. He's an Active Rain member. He's become a friend of mine over the years. He went and wrote that post. He went and wrote the post, homes for sale with a basement in Dallas. And so by the next day, I think I saw him again that next day. He let me know. He said, "Hey, man, I wrote that post. I'll let you know how it does. It's already ranking at the tops of the search engines." And so, a couple of weeks later, the next time I have a chance to interact with Tom, I asked him, "Hey, man, how's that post doing?" He said, "You know what? That post is getting a bunch of traffic to it. So it's one of the best trafficked posts on my blog right now." This was maybe 2 years ago. Every time I've seen Tom since then, I've had a chance to see him maybe 2 or 3 times this year, he always brings that post up, and he will say to me, "This post is the most trafficked post on my website." Or I think the last time I said him, he said something like, "Man, in 2013, that post has led to like 4 transactions for me." Now, he kind of hit this really sweet spot where there's kind of this, this perfect confluence of events, right? Where you don't have homes in Dallas. You still have a lot of people moving to that area, and I think a lot of people trying to figure out why the homes don't have basements. The idea is, though, these things work, okay? And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go through and kind of show you the blueprint for writing a post of this nature. Something for sale with something. So in this case, right, because it doesn't always have to be homes for sale. It could be townhomes for sale or condos for sale or townhouses for sale or houses instead of homes, right? The word that we use for that, to indicate the type of housing, it could be important. But if somebody was to do, like I'm writing about 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle, if they were to do townhouses, there's a chance they can find me as well. And one of the things you're going to notice about this post as we start to dive into it is it's pretty wordy, maybe. And one of the things about search engine optimization, about getting our content found and discovered in 2014, this is going to be something that I really harp on in our classes moving forward this year. Our blueprint classes, as we start to go back and look at our boot camp classes again, the search engines are a lot different than they were, like, let's say in 2011 even, and maybe even into 2012. Our content has to have depth to it today in order to get it to rank. So 7 years ago when we launched Active Rain, I guess we're coming up on, I think, 8 years now. But even, 5 years ago and even like 3 or 4 years ago, we could write a piece of content like 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle, and we could have that thing ranking on the first page, a lot of times in the first position, rather quickly without really any depth to our content. Some of the more recent updates to the algorithms inside of Google are dictating that long-form content with some depth to it, is actually beginning to rank better than short form content. And it makes sense, because if you were to put, just a generic, one of those types of posts where if I switched out the keyword phrase with some other keyword phrase that was similar, right? Instead of like 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle, maybe it was, townhomes with a basement in Seattle. Like if I was to switch the words and the phrases out, it would still make sense. That type of post is just not going to rank anymore. And this is something, as I go through and I get a chance to look at content from different people, and they're asking me to evaluate it and let me know why isn't this thing ranking on the first page, or what can I do to get it to rank a little bit higher. My answer a lot of times this year is going to be, you look at this post and honestly give me your own assessment. Is this the best piece for this subject? And Google's getting that much better at determining what is the best piece of content. Okay, so let's go in here. Let's look at our blog post. When we're all done with this, we're going to have a recording for you guys to look at, and then we're also going to give you an actual blueprint. And here is that blueprint that's going to walk you through kind of each component of our blog post, and then, why it's important and why we need to have it in there. Now, you're going to know this because you just listened to me talk about it, but you'll have this blueprint here to be able to use in the future, tomorrow, when you've forgotten everything that I talked about here today. Okay, so the first portion of our blog post, and it's always the first portion of our blog post as we sit and we think about, what is somebody going to be searching for, is that title. And you'll notice my title describes exactly what it is that I'm talking about. It's a 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle. And the reason that I chose this particular example is the last time I was on the hunt for somewhere to live in Seattle, or a place to potentially purchase in Seattle, this is what I was looking for. This design of townhome is one that really got popular in kind of the mid-2000s, about 10 years ago in Seattle, when we had kind of the start of our housing boom. There was a lot of rezoning that took place, and the city planners kind of allowed this type of housing unit to be built. And they're pretty skinny in nature. They're tall, right? They're 3 stories. They're generally 3 bedrooms, 1.5 to 2 bath generally. And there's just around the city of Seattle, there is this certain kind of design of townhomes, and I know they're popular. Okay, when I was looking at different units like this, they were flying off the shelves at that time. And granted, there was this kind of housing boom taking place, but this version of home was very popular. So it would make sense to write something about that. It would make sense that people might be looking for information about this. And then again, I want you to think about, how are people led to do searches of this nature, right? They go out onto to Trulia or something, right? And they're on Trulia, and they're many, many months away from buying something, but they're looking around and they find a specific kind of house that they like, right? And let's say they come back later and it's not as easy for them to find that house again, right? They don't have a sorting feature on Trulia that allows somebody to search for 3 stories, right? So you're looking at all the townhomes and you're having to dig through these things and try to figure out, which ones are the ones of the style that I like, right? People, they don't want to do that. And more today, they just go to the Google to get the answer that they want. So our title is going to be indicative of what it is that we're talking about, right? And we're going to get all of the extra kind of fluff and junk out of there. It's just going to be what it is we're about to discuss. In this case, 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle. Homes for sale with a basement in Dallas. And now the order of, like I went feature, type of housing for sale in city, right? Homes for sale with a basement in Dallas becomes, type of dwelling for sale with feature in city. That doesn't matter. And in fact, if somebody was to do a search of like, Seattle townhomes with 3 stories, something like that, like there's a pretty darn good chance with the depth of content that I have here that I'm still going to show up. And this is what's called semantic search. It used to be that the search engines would look at the actual words, the order of the words that the person queried, and would pay more attention to those things as it looked at potential solutions to that query. Now, that's not the case any longer. Things are changing, right? This semantic search will dictate that it doesn't matter if they query 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle, if they query 3-story townhouses in Seattle, if they query Seattle townhomes with 3 stories, like those are semantically, those 3 phrases are all the same. So inside of my blog post, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we'll talk about it now, you get this depth where I have words like townhouses instead of townhomes, right? I have different kind of variations of my keyword phrase, and I use it in different ways. And I even use semantic or similar but different phrases. But it always starts with my title. It's going to be descriptive. We're going to use Google-friendly keywords, right? We're going to state, or it seems pretty simple to me, but okay, that first line then. I always used to see the first line, people just restate the title. We'll do something a little bit different here. I'm gonna have an H2 tag on that first kind of phrase there, and I'm gonna have it be similar to my keyword phrase, but not exactly the same. So I'm just gonna pose a question: why 3-story townhomes? You can do that any way you want. Kind of that statement. It's not really a sentence, right? That first kind of statement there, I see a lot of people would fall into just make it 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle and match my title. I know why you do that, because we talk about page descriptions being in there and the search engine pulling that out as part of the page description and the portion that they'll show in the search result, the non-clickable portion of the search result. I'm going to use a similar. As we go through these blueprints, you'll notice you've got some orange, or that light orange. Those are just suggestions. The green then is a call to action. So our first call to action is going to come in I guess this first sentence, right? We've got the statement, which is just, a similar but different phrase to our keyword phrase using an H2 tag. Then we've got our first call to action. In my case, find the current 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle. So let's go in here and look at the live post. Here's my call to action. It's a link. It allows somebody to find the current three-story townhomes for sale in Seattle, because what is my blog post? It is not the current listings. And in a lot of cases, this is what they want. If they typed in three-story townhomes for sale in Seattle, they probably wanted to see a list of the properties like that. They probably didn't want, even though I'm going to give it to them, they probably didn't want this really great explanation of the zoning changes that led to the explosion of three-story townhomes, and what neighborhoods you'll find these things in, and why people love living in them, and what's the general layout and design of this type of house. They probably didn't want that. That's the information I'm gonna use to get myself ranking in the search engine. What they probably wanted is the listings. And so this very first, above the fold, one of the first things I give them an opportunity to do is to find the listings. And so mine links back to, and I use market leader sites for these. If you guys have been on my classes before, market leader owns Active Brain. Your site may do something like this. But basically what I had to do is I had to try to figure out, how do I create a search that is going to get me three-story townhomes when I know that my IDX feed doesn't look at how many stories are in a home? So this is kind of a challenge. And a lot of people would say, well, I'm not going to write about that because I can't link to a place on my website that just gives three-story townhouses, so I'm just not going to. Figure it out, okay? So here's how I figured it out. And it's not a perfect science, right? There are going to be, inside of this search that I set up, some two-story townhouses. There's probably going to be some one-story condos, but I'm going to get them as close as I think that I can. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here. It's going to be Seattle, right? I'm writing about three-story townhomes for sale in Seattle, so I'm going to restrict my search to Seattle. I'm going to go in a price range that I know those kind of homes kind of fall in, and I probably did that a little low. In Seattle, in between about $300,000 and $650,000, you'll find this type of home. Okay, they are generally 3 bedrooms. Now there are a few 2-bedroom kind of varieties of this model or this type of home. I'm going to stick with 3, and they're generally 1.75 baths. Generally going to be over 1,000 square feet, and I know most of these were built after the year 2000. In fact, I could probably even come in here and do something like 2003, but I'll leave it at 2000. And then I only want the condo townhouse co-op option. I don't want any of this other stuff because I'm writing about townhouses, so that'll get me a little bit closer. And then I'm going to do property feature with a garage, because the particular type of unit that I'm talking about in this example, most of them were built with garages. That was one of the kind of cool things about the design, is it allowed a garage to be built into the design, with that bottom floor was mostly garage. All right, now that I've got kind of what I think is a pretty good look at my market and a search that's gonna definitely get them some 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle. It might not get them every single one. There might be some other stuff in the search that's not exactly that, but that's all right. When they land there, right, as they start looking through, like, oh man, that's a great one. That's one of those 3-story townhomes, like I'm talking. So is this, right? So is this. Like, as I go through here, that's the look. So this is a perfect landing page. I'm going to take this URL, and that's going to be what I use for my first link in here. Now notice, and I'll never use the word like click here, right? Or some, like, the phrase that I use for my anchor text, the words that make up my link, that's my anchor text. That phrase matches my keyword phrase, matches the title of my blog post. Call to action, right? Links to your website, allowing them to find similar properties. Figure it out. Like, if you have to have that in there. This becomes the crux of our lead generation ability with a post like this, right? It's that ability for them to get to the listings, get to the thing they probably wanted, right? We used great content to get ourselves ranking, but at the end of the day, they wanted the listings. And the awesome thing about that link I just created is a year from now, when somebody comes to this page and they click on that link, they're going to get the new listings that are available that day 1 year from now, not the listings that were available today when I first created that link. All right, so our next little picture of the type of the home, right? We probably don't need more than one image, maybe an additional image, but I always like my posts to be just clean, right? Really focusing on the content, the call to action. You know, the image is meant to kind of draw their eyes in, right? I'm talking about three-story townhomes for sale in Seattle. It's probably a good idea that I have a picture of that type of a home. This is not rocket science by any means, okay? So then we get into like, what am I actually writing in here? And for this first kind of couple of paragraphs, why are people interested in this type of home? So when Tom wrote his blog post about homes for sale with a basement in Dallas, one of the very first things that he talked about was we don't have very many homes for sale with a basement in Dallas. And the reason for that is because much of the city of Dallas is built on clay. And so it's very expensive to dig out and set the foundation for a basement. And so most builders just don't do it. Most of the homes in Dallas that do have basements in them are custom built homes, and you're generally going to pay a premium for a home with a basement. Right now, some of the reasons why people like having a basement in Dallas is, man, in the summertime when it gets to be 108 degrees and the humidity sweltering, basements make for a nice getaway from the heat, right? And you're obviously going to have air conditioning in that basement, but man, it seems to keep the air conditioning in just a little bit longer. Right? You give the reasons why people are interested in this type of a house, and so there is not really a formula, right? Because a three-story townhome for sale in Seattle it's going to be a heck of a lot different than a home for sale with a master bedroom on the main floor in Seattle, right? Like the reasons why people are interested in this type of home are going to be vastly different, right? We would never just be able to swap out our keywords. But you really need to get in and think about, like, what can you share about this type of home and why somebody might be looking for it. And in my scenario, I just go in here and I talk about, this is a relatively new kind of design in Seattle. During the housing boom, there was a lot of rezoning that took place, and this design for me is, makes you feel like you got a lot of room and a lot of space in there, and you're not kind of boxed in like you might feel in a condo if you've ever lived in a condo. So I just kind of try to give them the idea of why people are interested in this kind of home. And then I summarize with bullets, and the use of bullets or numbered lists inside of your content can allow the person reading it to have something easy to go to if they're just wanting to skim, right? They're not maybe necessarily interested in jumping in and reading every single word. Those bullets gives people something to skim, and from a formatting perspective, they're good. There's something on the page to draw someone's attention to. So I would say summarize, if you give me some real detailed, in-depth information about this type of home, go ahead and summarize for me then kind of what you talked about. And what I do in there is I talk about some of the reasons it's desirable, and I talk about one or two things that I've talked about before, and then I talk about one or two things that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. All right, so now we're getting down to kind of, I don't know, I guess you'd call it below the fold, right? We get down into this region. So look, if somebody was interested in a three-story townhome for sale in Seattle, we give them an opportunity real quick to get to the listings. If they thought, man, let me read about it, let me learn about this design, and they get in here. Now I start talking about the design and the homes, right? So this next paragraph becomes like, what is that type of home? Like, what's inside of it, right? So if it was a home for sale with a basement in Dallas, you're going to talk about like the idea of having a basement in a home where a lot of the homes don't have basements, and what do people do in the basements? You're generally, in a lot of these, because they're custom built homes, you'll see a bar, right? You'll see, that kind of man cave ideas in a lot of these things, right? You can do whatever you want with it, but as you go in and you're looking through homes and you're looking at homes to buy, this is going to be the general theme that you see in these houses, right? In mine, I talk about, because it's this 3-story townhome design, I talk about the base, the ground floor, generally having a garage designed into the unit. There's generally one small bedroom, or even sometimes it's classified as a den. There's generally access on that ground floor to like a patio. If the unit comes with a patio, you're generally going to find that on the ground floor, right? The second floor then, and I just go through, right, as you move into the second floor of the design, you are generally met with an open kitchen and living room design with one flowing into the other, right? And I just walk through like that type of house. Like what are the design elements? What do I expect to see when I walk in the door? Next piece. Got an image. My second image, my first image call to action. I'm going to give this image call to action to all of you guys. I had to pay a pretty penny to get the licensing rights for this little sign. It was not cheap. But we had our designers here at Active Rain take this deal, put that wording on it. You're not going to be able to change the wording, right? If you want to do that, go buy the rights to this clip art yourself. You can put whatever the heck you want on that thing. And there will be some people that do this. We're going to give you this image, which basically just says, click here to find the current inventory for this type of home. And, I mean, is there any question where this link goes? Does anybody have any doubt that it goes to the same spot that this link goes? Right, which gives them the ability to kind of find the current 3-story townhomes, right? How many were on there earlier? 58? Yeah, 58, same link. Okay, next paragraph. Where can I find this type of home in this area? So where can I find this townhouse design in Seattle? And notice what I'm doing. I'm kind of getting my keyword phrases in there. I'm kind of changing it up a little bit. Right? Where can I find this townhouse? I didn't use townhome like I did in the title. Right? I switched it up a little bit. If you were to read through this blog post, this is real. Like I really wrote this about 3-story townhomes. This is real information. This post will get onto the first page. Yesterday it was like at the bottom, it was in third or fourth position on the second page. It will get into the first page. There's good information here. And when you sit down and you write really solid information about something, the semantic evidence on the rest of the page becomes overwhelming, right? The words and phrases that are on this page that relate to my keyword phrase, almost every single sentence has some kind of a word or phrase that relates to either townhouse, 3-story, right? Seattle, for sale, right? There's all these in this particular area. I got words relating to Seattle. I've got Queen Anne, Ballard, Capitol Hill, Green Lake, Rainier Valley, West Seattle, and just about every neighborhood in the city. Right? Where can I find this townhome design? I just go through. I talk about as builders took advantage of the new zoning rules at the start of the century. Almost nowhere in this city has escaped this desirable design. So where inside of my town or the area I'm writing about can this type of home be found? Right? And so, listen, you guys, I realize, like, if you are writing about, I don't know, a 3-story townhome, like, basically, these things are in every neighborhood. They're in every nook and cranny of Seattle at this point. Like, I can still create a story out of that. Like, you can take the lazy route and go, where can I find this townhome design in Seattle? And it's one sentence. You can find this townhouse in every community, in every neighborhood. But see what I did? Like I took some time to give this content some depth, because I know that today the search engines are looking at, they're literally able to get into a piece of content. They're able to look at the sentences and the paragraphs and the structure of the page and how the words relate to one another, and they're starting to just like a real human would understand what's on this page. Okay, why do people buy this type of townhome? So this becomes to me kind of a, I don't know, it's a synopsis of all the stuff that I've talked about up to this point, right? And I do this in a bullet form. And again, I do it in a bullet form because bullets draw people's eyes to them from a formatting perspective. And I want to give them a quick, clean conclusion for what I've written about. Well, almost anyway. The quick, clean conclusion is going to come in my very last paragraph, but I'm going to give them some bullets just to kind of reinforce to them why this type of home. My last paragraph, my ultimate conclusion is going to be to remind them again where it is they can go to find the current inventory for this type of house. So how do you find current 3-story homes for sale in Seattle? Right, our website is updated real time with information from the local MLS available on every current blah, 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 blah. Follow this link in order to find the currently available 3-story townhomes for sale in Seattle. Not exactly matching my keyword phrase, just slightly different. That's the end of our blueprint. So this is, again, you guys, I mean, if you were to go through and look at our different blueprint classes, these things are not rocket science. Creating a post like this is not easy, though. I don't want you to think that we do these blueprints and then I sit there and think to myself, man, this is so easy. People should be doing 3 of these a day. Like, you have to know some, like, the reason I was able, I did sit down, though, granted, and wrote this in about 20 or 25 minutes. Now, a couple of things. I write frequently, so I'm able to probably do something faster than just the average person, but we have a lot of bloggers that blog frequently. You may be one of them. I know about this subject matter. I did a lot of research on it when I was looking at buying this type of a townhouse. So I had the information in my head, but hey, you guys are real estate agents. You do this all day long. Like, you're looking at houses, you're sharing with people, you know, the benefits of different types of properties, that you should be able to do this in your, okay? The thing that I would think about first, there's 2 things that is the types of houses that are, the types of features and things in homes that are very popular. Okay, I want you to think about those. Because, like, and again, I want you to go back to why do people do this? Why do these types of searches emerge? And one of the reasons is the limitations of IDX. Again, if we're on Trulia and somebody's, you know, they're looking through houses, they're in a certain price range in a certain area, and they're wanting the homes with stainless steel appliances, and they realize that there's no search for stainless steel appliances. Right? They're not above going out to Google, because it's this purveyor of the answer to everything we ever need, and doing a search like homes for sale in Seattle, 3-bedroom homes for sale in Seattle with stainless steel appliances, right? God, I just want to find my 3-bedroom steel appliances in Seattle. Okay, you do have to know, right? You have to, like I said, the first part is if once you can write something like this, it doesn't take very long. You have to know the data. You guys are real estate agents. You should be able to create this kind of content about, you know, homes for sale with something specifically in your market. So the first side is I would do the things that are popular. The second side, and this is, I would never have given this advice had Tom Branch not done what he did in Dallas and wrote the post about the type of home that they don't really have, is I would think about maybe things that might be desirable to somebody that's not from your area. Like, here's a good example. In Washington State, there's not a lot of demand or people that live in the state and move around the state. There's not a ton of demand for air conditioning. Okay, we don't have in Seattle, just a lot of the houses don't have air conditioning. Now, some of the newer houses do, but man, you're looking at houses that were built between, you know, any time like pre-1980s, they do not have air conditioning. There's no upgrades have been made to them. It doesn't get hot or hot enough. But people moving from out of the area, they might be looking for a house with air conditioning, right? They might not realize it doesn't get that hot in Seattle. So just think about like some of the preconceived notions you have about your own market and some of the things you might be able to write about if you were literally to not get caught up in your own head, to not be that person that was sitting in the audience as I was talking about the tornado in Dallas, thinking to themselves, well, I don't know why anybody would ever write about homes for sale with a basement in Dallas. We don't have those here. The one guy who just did it, he gets a lot of traffic today still to his website because of the fact that they don't have a lot of that type of housing unit in Dallas.